I'm late. I'm not that late. I'm only about, 2 minutes late? So we're doing a live stream. We're going to talk about monsters, primarily because I like talking about monsters, and I thought I would find one that was totally bizarre. This is probably the peak of the drug-taking period during TSR, when they were developing any kind of Dungeons and Dragons property. So for those of you who wanted something completely bizarre and strange for Spelljammer, well, guess what? You're going to get it today because we did it last time. I think the Rogue Moon was something, but the Firelich is another thing. There will be a poll running. Just remember, you can't change your vote. So my suggestion to you is get some food, get some drink, get yourself comfortable, and I will tell you about one of the more peculiar attempts at creating a monster by any design team whatsoever. They are all very much spread out now. But anyway, get comfortable. Let's go into the Firelich. Hi, welcome to HowtoDandD. My name is Fred Weller, and today I want to talk about Dungeons and Dragons. But we're not going to just talk about Dungeons and Dragons. We're going to talk about strange monsters. We're going to take it all the way back to the dinosaur age. No, but close. No, we're going to take it all the way back to TSR. We're going back to advanced Dungeons and Dragons. This is a time where really drug taking was at its peak, I suspect, in the design team, and they created a thing called the Firelich for Spelljammer. Essentially, a Firelich is a comet, which is, of course, something that flies around in space, and they decided to turn it into a monster and weaponize it. And so what's the better way than to have a guided missile comet that is a lich? Because what's scarier than a lich? Although there are times where I feel like maybe it should have been called the Fire Demi-Lich because of its very nature. Now, it doesn't actually look like this. For those of you who are wondering, like, is that actually what it looks like? Well, actually, no. No, the original artwork, I didn't think that anybody would actually be very interested, so I stuck a flaming skull there, but it's basically a flaming skull, maybe just not green. No, this is what the original artwork is like, and I could not find anything in the modern vein of this sort of thing. This is what a Firelich looks like. It's a head on fire that flies around, and we're going to talk about all the different weird and bizarre things that this thing does, because it does quite a few bizarre things. It is a strange monster. So, I hope you are ready for a little bit of a journey as we go through the mind of somebody who's clearly off their rocker. The Firelich for Spelljammer, Dungeons and Dragons, Monster Lore. Here we go. The Firelich is a high-level evil mage. Is it definitely evil? Yeah, it is evil. Okay, whose body was prepared for lichdom. That's when you become a lich, or you will be becoming a lich, upon their death. And of course, to become a lich, you have to die. Now, either through ignorance by the spellcaster or by some sort of spell failure, something got ballsed up really badly by the magic user, they explode in the phlogiston, which is basically the sea of stars, the astral sea, the phlogiston. It's like I feel like it's all very confusing. I know if I had AJ Pickett here, he could divide it all up and explain exactly the difference between each one of them. But seriously, it's just fantasy Dungeons and Dragons space, basically. And they transform into a Firelich when this occurs, this explosion occurs. The lich preparation spells in the wizard's body has turned them into a living fireball, essentially, that's undead. Of course, you would be undead. Racing through wild space as a Firelich, endlessly, on and on and on. Now, Fireliches scream in eternal pain, because this is quite painful, this whole transformation, and they're looking for something to collide with, like to smash into, as a way of extinguishing the flames. Do not ask me why a Firelich has assumed that smashing into something will put out the flames. A Firelich resembles a comet of sort of yellow, orange, and red flames. The Firelich's head has a skull-shaped face with a mouth that appears locked in a perpetual scream, and the Firelich's head itself measures about 6 inches in diameter, and it has a fiery tail about 18 inches long that is trailing behind it, and it has no legs. Like, there's no body to this thing. Now, when you start engaging with a creature like this in combat, it gets very complicated. It also seems completely one-sided. For those of you who are wondering, it is. Unlike its ground brethren, the Firelich goes out of its way to find confrontation. A Firelich's blazing eyes will always seek out spell-jamming ships, basically any kind of ship, in the same way that a person would seek out who's on fire. So if you're on fire, you would seek out water or a blanket to sort of cover yourself with, or you would want to sort of drop to the ground and roll, and drop it, roll, and hopefully it goes out. This is sort of what the Firelich is doing. It's using the Spelljammer ship as a way of trying to put itself out, because apparently there's not water floating in the astral sea. Okay, yep. We've got that. We understood that one. The first sign that a Firelich is in the area is its luminescence. That's very luminous. Its fiery appearance, and then it's followed by that ear-splitting shriek of pain. Viewing the Firelich causes the victim to be frightened unless they can resist the magical fear that the monster causes. Now, the Firelich's fearful presence is so powerful that even if a victim isn't frightened by the creature, it's so disturbed by the presence of this thing being around it that their attacks are done in panic and they become less accurate. Basically, if you're playing Dungeons & Dragons 5e, you can consider it you're fighting with disadvantage, no matter what, frankly. It doesn't matter whether you were to save or not save. The Firelich's attacks basically look like this. It plunges headlong into the Spelljammer ship in a screaming dive. And then the Firelich can then punch through the Spelljammer ship fairly effectively. It goes through the hull, can go through the deck, and it potentially can come out the other side. So make a great huge hole, one through one side and then out the other. This will cause fire to the ship and to any flammable objects on the ship, potentially creatures as well, but definitely the ship itself and objects sitting on the deck. In frustration, or even objects inside the ship, in frustration, the Firelich shrieks and flies off when a collision doesn't extinguish the flames that are burning it. The only problem is that colliding with a ship will never put out the flames, as far as I can tell. So that means that it's always going to be screaming off, frustrated at some point. You can see the problem here. Once a Firelich explodes, the Firelich reforms and flees frantically through space, screaming in renewed frustration. I do feel like potentially that the Firelich may in fact have amnesia, probably as a result of slamming itself into a ship and forgetting that they've already tried this technique before and it hasn't worked in the past, and yet it continues to try to do the same thing. If you haven't figured it out, a Firelich is not necessarily the brightest creature. I do feel like it's not quite on the same par as your normal lich. Now, since a Firelich is undead, it can be turned by turning abilities, say a cleric or priest or something like that, or paladin. It is considered a special undead. Now, when I say special, does that mean special as in the, or does that mean special as in special undead? I don't know what that really means, okay? It's just not your normal undead. Although it is a lich, the Firelich cannot cast spells known in its previous existence. So it doesn't cast any kind of spells. All it does is fly through space, smashing into ships, causing destruction. It has no limbs to actually cast somatic components to a spell anyway, and it cannot mouth the words for the verbal portion of a spell. So even if it knew those spells, it couldn't actually perform them because it isn't able to actually talk. Right, now we're starting to see a problem here. You can't talk with it because it can't really speak and mouth words, and it has no limbs, so it can't hold anything. There's a lot of problems here. And it doesn't appear to have telekinetic abilities as well, so that also strikes a... Well, look, Demi-Lich has got a better chance of being successful, correct? Okay, what about the habitat and society of the the Firelich? It is unknown how wizards get from the phlogiston to wild space before becoming a Firelich. It's often not sort of easy to figure that out. This is an unknown quantity, since the only wizards that can become a Firelich are the ones that had previously done their preparation for lichdom. It actually needs to take place in wild space. So the guess is that an arcane lich ceremony tears a temporal hole, or a temporary hole, potentially a temporal hole as well, in wild space, allowing the energy from wild space and for the wizard who gets transformed into the Firelich to be present in wild space as a result of the actual ceremony of lichdom. Now, the energy to create this dimensional tear may come from the explosion that created the Firelich. These are a lot of theory here. There's not definite stuff here, so you can add to it by all means. If this is true, the hole certainly closes immediately after the Firelich enters wild space. Yet again, another guess. Fireliches are solitary. They are stunning even for those who share their suffering. So if you thought that you were dealing with a creature that was not terrifying, this is a terrifying monster. Due to the Firelich's pain and probable madness as a result of the transformation and its existence, the Firelich is not a talkative creature. It can't really talk, and it really doesn't want to engage in a chat. So if you were wanting to sit down and have a social interaction with it, or a social engagement, maybe coffee, tea, dinner, lunch, something like that, it's probably not going to work. Some observers managed to coax a Firelich to reveal their identities. Frankly, I'm not sure how they did that, since they had no limbs to actually write anything with, and they can't speak. Again, probably just conjecture by somebody who's just making up stuff. Now, the ecology of the Firelich, this is an aberration. And in any healthy ecosystem, you can only ever classify it as an aberration. If a Firelich perishes, which frankly, I'm not sure anybody knows how that happens, only wisps of smoke remain. We are still speculating here, because I don't think anybody's ever found a way of dealing with a Firelich. The Firelich's spelljamming ability is innate, so it can actually travel through space very quickly. This is why it's referring to spelljamming ability. It's kind of like Spelljammer has warp and warp speed, and warp speed is spelljammer speed, I guess. You can't harness the power of a Firelich to actually power your spelljammer ship, so don't try. Now, there is apparently a story that is circulating around in the various sort of ports and so forth, starports, that there has been an occasion where a group of individuals, pirates, were in wild space and they captured a Firelich. Who knows how they managed to do that, and tried to connect it to their spelljammer helm, and the spelljammer ship overloaded and exploded. So don't try this. It's dangerous. Okay, so there are a couple of other things to fill in here. Like, what are we going to do with this thing? Because it is basically a flying, homing comet of destruction designed specifically to destroy spelljammer ships, or ships in the astral sea, or phlogiston, or wild space, or whatever you want to call the heck it is. Like, it's there basically not necessarily to attack the player characters or anybody. It's just after ships, something big enough to smash into, which kind of sort of begs the question, why is it not trying to slam into an asteroid, which is probably a lot tougher, and you'd think that would be easier to actually, maybe that would put you out, or finding itself an actual comet. Because isn't a comet made up of ice and rock? So you might actually put yourself out if you slammed into an actual comet. Anyway, how do you defeat a Firelich? It's not clear how to destroy a Firelich, frankly, from what I have read so far. And due to, well, so little is known about this thing, so no, you probably can't. The Firelich doesn't appear to have a phylactery, although because it keeps reforming, it does suggest there is a phylactery somewhere, but I suspect that the Firelich doesn't know where that phylactery is, which means you're probably never going to find that phylactery in the first place. So it's probably safer to avoid this monster wherever possible. If you're, sailing through the astral sea and you see a Firelich, fly away very, very fast. Now, how would you incorporate the Firelich into your adventure if you're playing Dungeons & Dragons, Pathfinder, or some other role-play game? Well, having a Firelich pursue the player character's Spelljammer ship like a guided missile while exploring the astral sea is probably the most obvious way to sort of include this monster. It's not necessarily a random encounter, although you suppose you could classify it as a random encounter. It's a fairly significant threat, so I do feel like you could tie it in some way. Then there's also the possibility that the characters could come across a wizard who is preparing for lichdom and then has this horrible accident in the process while casting a spell and trying to go through the process of becoming a lich, and is then transformed into a Firelich, and they just happen to be around when that happens. So that could be quite a lot of fun as well, and I'm sure you'll be able to figure out other ways of using the Firelich in your game. Now, references. Where do you find this creature? Well, you'll find it down in the description. There is a link to this monster. It is Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. There is, in fact, a 5th edition conversion for this, and I don't have it linked because I haven't been able to find it since I found it the first time. But if I do, I will let you all know about it. Now, what you will find is the original source for this is the Monstrous Compendium for Spelljammer. And this is a very difficult item to get hold of. So if you're struggling, you're probably better off to just stick with the link I've provided you with in the description and make your life easy rather than difficult. Now, there have been other references to this monster in other books, but that seems to be the most common one that I have found. Now, I'm hoping that this was useful and helpful to you in some way, and it has inspired you to use it to dumbfound your players and their characters in some way. So yes, please have a go. There's nothing more fun than messing around with Spelljammer monsters. So let me know what you think of this monster, how you might go about using it in the comments section. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s. I'm not gone. I'm just drinking water. Okay, where am I? Coming back. Let's have a look at what we've got here into the comments section. I am aware that this sort of video is not high traffic, highly, it's not the sort of thing that a lot of people want to watch. But for me, I feel like this is the sort of thing that I like. And so I want to talk about this creature as much as I can, but you know me. Q&A always means we can talk about anything under the sun, and you're welcome to fire away as much as you like, and we will get through as much as we can. I will just say, in about an hour and 40 minutes on the HowtoDandD Twitch channel, thank you, Agile Monk. You didn't have to super chat me for this one. So I'm hoping that we can kind of brainstorm a few ideas around the Firelich, because I was having a think about it, and I was trying not to laugh, because I mean there's a good reason. I did a poll and people said they wanted to know about the Firelich. Now you've got it. Now you know what you're dealing with. But I do appreciate that, Agile Monk. The super sticker is awesome. So what I will do is I will give you a link to Denny's Twitch channel, because at about an hour and 40 minutes we will have a panel of 4. We will be talking about, well, frankly, Denny provided me with a whole bunch of questions which I really struggled with, either because I've already answered those questions a gazillion times, or questions that I don't know what to do with them. So this should be interesting. This is probably going to show off my skills at bullshitting like you wouldn't believe during this live stream, because I'm going to have to make up some crap to be able to get through that. I can't think of any other way. Now, I'm sure that Denny and Jordan from Flute's Loot and Logan will have a much better chance at actually coming up with something that isn't off the cuff, but I will probably not. Because I was like, do I want to say the same thing I've already said before? Well, not really. But we will get to this. And yes, I knew somebody was going to mention something about the Firelich and the Eldritch Lich. But you've got the Eldritch Lich. Wizards of the Coast gave you that, Mike. We'll get back to that. So that's the link to it in about an hour and 40 minutes. And I will put it in the comments section of my channel. Okay, so let's have a look at the poll and let's go through the chat. Do you want to use the Firelich in your Dungeons and Dragons game? And we've got 30% who said yes. And then 20% who said, 10% who said no. and the biggest portion, 60% said undecided. 10 votes so far. Hopefully we get a few more votes. Flick in those votes, people. Okay, so let's have a talk about this thing. Hi, Samuel. The original artwork looks like Nicolas Cage playing a Firelich. Well, it looks like, do you know, if anything, I feel like it looks like Nicolas Cage on fire just before his face transforms into the Ghost Rider skull. Do you know what I mean? And every time I sort of see that image, I'm almost sort of, I keep thinking, you know, what would have happened in that terrible movie Ghost Rider? It had some potential. What if he had ripped his head off and just thrown it at somebody while it was cackling? That's kind of what we're getting across. It almost feels very like the Headless Horseman. It does have that feel to it. Hello, William Lee. How's it going? Love your background. I'm glad you do. Would you like to know what this is? This background is actually a tapestry or a wall hanging, and it is from the Lord of the Rings. So this is the elf place, the elf kingdom, yes, that one. Yep. Okay. All right. It eludes me what it was called. I did know. I don't know now, apparently. My brain has gone and it's done a fart and it's gone. Right. So what do you got here, Monk? Sounds like you just jumped into a moss pit and run into each other. run at each other. Yeah, you could. Yeah, why not? Yep. I think I'm doing better than most days, but I don't know that a Firelich is. I mean, it does sound like a very peculiar monster, but let's get real. If you wanted to have a guided missile comet in your game, now you can, and now you can call it the Firelich. Samuel, I think we know what kind of special this monster is. I'm glad you have figured that out. Yeah, I was thinking that myself. And no way am I wanting to give anybody a hard time at all. But in the case of this make-believe creature, a make-believe creature doesn't have feelings, okay? So we can't offend it, all right? Okay, and that's the only thing we're trying to offend is the make-believe monster called the Firelich. So we can't offend it. Nobody should be getting offended by that. Okay, next, Mike. Yeah, is a Firelich related to a demi-lich? I was actually thinking that a lot. What about the Eldritch Lich? Look, there's nothing to suggest that. I feel like the Eldritch Lich is its own thing, and I don't want to muddy the waters because the Eldritch Lich is pretty cool, and the artwork I've seen for it is horrific. And who would want to mess with that? But I do kind of feel like the Firelich it kind of feels like a demi-lich, but it's not, because a demi-lich has still got the ability to control things, even though it doesn't have limbs. So I think what this is supposed to be is wizards out there, when you decide to become a lich and you think that you're going to be fine, no, there are possibilities, there are some problems. And one of the cons, one of the negatives of trying to become a lich is getting completely messed up and winding up like this thing. I think that's where we're going. Kunchi, 245, thank you for the super chat. Wow. Love your channel, Fred. I'm excited for your next Lost Mine of Fendelver class on YouTube. You do remind me, Country 245. So, I have been working on the Lost Mine of Fendelver, working on the slides, getting that all ready. That is going to be, it is Friday for me, Thursday probably for you guys, if you're in North America. So on Sunday for me, which is Saturday for North America, we're going to be having a Lost Mine of Fendelver Dungeon Master tutorial, which is done every week. And yes, I'm going to be talking about the Red Brand Hideout. Yes, I have a big ass map that I have to try to fit on my desk. Yes, the setup for it is stupidly complicated, and yes, I'm still going to do it, and yes, there are still slides. I have added to that particular class since I last run it, so there is some additional information, and I will probably add other stuff to it based on what was said in the last class that I ran for that. So I think one of the problems with the Red Brand Hideout is it's very easy to just follow what you've got there and you'll be fine. But there are some sort of hidden gems there that you could miss. Okay, back to Fire Liches and Crazy Monsters made by Wizards of the Coast, not Wizards of the Coast, TSR, let's not forget that. Spirit Wolf 1966. What kind of interaction would this have with the Spelljammer ship? It would put the Spelljammer ship out of commission. It will put a hole in one side and then a hole in the other side, and it will probably catch on fire. So this means the crew of your Spelljammer ship have now got to try to figure out how to put out the fire. They've got to repair the damage to their ship, and it potentially could result in the Spelljammer ship blowing up. That's all up to you. You're the Dungeon Master. You can do what you like. And it is a monster that, frankly, is very odd. And if I do, in fact, find the original, not the original, but the homebrew stat block for this creature, I will get it to you, and I'll put it in the description, and I'll put it in the comments section. I just, for the life of me, I could not find it once I had found it. And that's a pain. Would you believe it right now, in the middle of a live stream, I'm being notified by like everything under the sun, like social media crap just everywhere. I haven't got the bots today, thank God for that, but social media has been hitting me pretty hard. So yeah. So you really can't have a chat with this thing, but yes, the ship is going to be significantly damaged, which will probably result in the players' characters having to limp their ship, if it's still intact, back to a spaceport. I think that's the best way to go about it, rather than have it blow up. A comparison? Maybe, Monk, a comparison. Maybe. Samuel, Ghost Rider wasn't that terrible. No, it wasn't that terrible. I am taking the piss out of things, as I always do. Like, there is nothing that's sacred. You know this. If you've watched my channel long enough, you know I will take the piss out of anything. Heck, I even take the piss out of myself. So, yeah. But yeah, I still feel like the Ghost Rider movie is rife for puns and jokes and harassment in some way, and just taking the piss out of it. It deserves some of that, frankly, but it wasn't a terrible movie. You're right. The second one is a different story. Now, Country, what do you got here? Oh, I've got hiccups. I don't need hiccups right now. Nicolas Cage has been putting out some dynamic movies lately. Has he? I haven't really seen much of his stuff recently. I know he has still been making movies. He's certainly not A-list material now. I think the result of a couple of really big duds and potentially some very difficult interactions with the actor have probably soured his ability to make movies. I know he's been doing, I guess, more independent stuff. Yeah. All right, so where are we? Back to creatures. Monster. Monk. What do you got here? This creature was created at TSR. while half the staff was experimenting with magic mushrooms. Yes, I believe they probably, yeah, magic mushrooms. Due to the struggles the company was having at the time, and they believed and high hopes for Spelljammer. Well, and you would have high hopes for Spelljammer if you were playing with magic mushrooms, wouldn't you? Okay, we'll move away from that topic because I know that I'm not saying that you should take drugs, people, because I worked in a drug and alcohol rehab, so I'm not saying that at all. But yes, there's definitely something weird going on here with with this creation. Okay, so I guess another couple of things I should say is about what is happening next week. Since we've still got a bit of time, please ask questions, give feedback. Look, I am happy to answer questions about anything or talk about anything under the sun, but I want to tell you what's happening in the future, specifically next week. So next week, we're going to tackle the issue of talking with gods and deities. So I will list it as my proverbial everyone's guide to talking with gods and deities for Dungeons and Dragons 5e. Okay, so that's the topic. So we're going to look at some of the class features for the cleric, obviously for 5e, and we're also going to have a look at some of the spells that you get access to. And we're going to talk about sort of like what you can do with this, because there's not really, I don't feel like talking with a god is going to be very mechanically heavy. I think it's going to be very Dungeon Master discretion heavy, as it should be. So that is where the discussion will be going next week. For those of you who wanted to have that aspect of the game, I know it doesn't come up very often because it tends to be very high level play, but I know that you can get, it can occur. It's happened for me. If it's happened for me, it may have happened for somebody else, maybe like 5% or 2% of the entire Dungeon Master population. Why am I talking about this topic then? Well, because I'm hoping that you will incorporate it more. That's why. That's what we're going to do next week. Spirit Wolf in 1966. The living Spelljammer ship, not the built ships. Ah, okay. Now, now I'm not entirely sure where you're going with this. How would it interact with this of the living Spelljammer ship and not the built ships? Well, I think it would just punch a hole in it. I think a fire lich punching its hole through a living Spelljammer ship isn't probably going to make it explode. So the Nautiloid, I think that's what you're talking about. That's what they're called for the Mind Flash Spelljammer ships are called? Is it a Nautiloid? It's not the Nautilus. I think it's a Nautiloid, which does feel like they've pinched heavily from somebody in particular when they were coming up with that idea. Yeah, I think all it would do is it would do damage. It would probably create a hole. There might be a bit of bleeding. The functionality of that living Spelljammer ship may be reduced, but living Spelljammer ships can be repaired, or should I say they are healed over time. And you can do some stuff to it to actually improve that process, which I'm sure the Mind Flayers will be up to. And look, there are other ships outside of that. So if you're talking about living Spelljammer ships, probably not going to explode, but will have a great huge hole in it. Well, at least a hole slightly bigger than 6 inches in diameter. Does that make sense? Hopefully that makes sense. Country, would it absorb the oxygen? Now, I suppose if you were thinking about the oxygen around the Spelljammer ship, whether it be a living one or a built one, because there is oxygen around objects in the astral sea, right? Yeah, it could, because it's fire, right? So it could eat up all the oxygen, making it difficult to breathe. So yes, that's certainly another complication you could add. What's the Spirit Wolf? There is a real Spelljammer ship. Is there a real Spelljammer ship? I don't know. You tell me. It's new on my... I don't know. I have no idea. Yeah, Firelich. I know what you're talking about. Fire, Lich, Oxygen burns away. I know where you're going with that. I get it. Yep. Okay, so before I'm not going to stop talking about the Firelich, but I'm going to also tell you about something else I've decided to do. So next week we're going to be talking about gods. Talking with gods is what the discussion is. Talking with gods in D&D 5e. But 2 weeks from now, I'm going to talk about Star Wars Saga. Now, for those of you who come to my channel for Dungeons & Dragons or Dungeons & Dragons 5e, please do not freak out, okay? But I have been wanting to talk about Star Wars Saga, the role-play game, for a long, long time. The game is very similar to 3.5 and 4e, and which means it's also relatively similar to 5e. So mechanically, it's not that far removed from what you know. There are classes, there are species or races, there are feats, there are other things as well. So that is where my discussion is going to go in 2 weeks' time. And for those of you who were unaware, there are a lot of different intellectual properties out there that use the 5e rules. And so I'll get back to that conversation because Samuel has just distracted me with another question. So we'll get to that one. Here we go. Make a Spelljammer ship out of the skull of an extinguished Firelich. Well, you could mount it on the front of your Spelljammer ship. I don't think it would be big enough to actually make a Spelljammer ship itself. But if you could actually find the skull of an extinguished Firelich, then yeah, I suppose you could add it to the front. I'm kind of curious as to whether the skull itself, when it's destroyed, I think it's destroyed. I think the idea is when you destroy a Firelich, as my notes have indicated here, let me just find those notes again. It did say a wisp of smoke. Smoke? One of those, not smoke, but smoke. Yeah. If the Firelich perishes, only wisps of smoke remain. So you probably couldn't do that, but like anything, you can ignore everything in the lore for this monster and just do your own thing. And I highly recommend you do that, because who's going to stop you? Not me. And if anybody else does, you let me know, and I will come around to their house. No, I'm only kidding. Yeah, just do whatever you want with a thing. Michael. Are you their god? It's me, Fred. Oh no. Now we're getting strange here. Yeah, Soltron 42. That will be awesome. Star Wars Saga. It's one of my favorite games. I have all of the books. I've been wanting to talk about this game for so long. It's so similar to Dungeons and Dragons mechanically. Like it's based off that engine. You can get it for free. Well, you could buy the books, but they'd be really expensive. But you can get everything as a PDF for free. And so I've been wanting to talk about it for ages. Now, coming back to the topic of 5e conversions and various franchises, and my desire to not have to talk about sodding Dungeons and Dragons every single time. I know I have to talk about 5e because that's what people are willing to sort of tolerate. They don't want to learn a new role-play game, and I get that. So I have accepted this fact. But we can go somewhere else other than sodding Dungeons and Dragons, and we will. Because so far I have found a conversion, and I am tempted to let you know about this probably, would it be tomorrow? Or the day after. I'll do a poll. I'll put it up. But what I'm going to do is I am going to talk about some of these 5e conversions for some of these larger products that use the 5e rules. But it's not Dungeons and Dragons. So what did I find? I found Flash Gordon. For those of you who like Flash Gordon. I know some of you will never even know who is Flash Gordon. Okay, never mind. Moving on. Flash Gordon. Ghostbusters. Yes, there are some 5e conversion stuff. Not a lot, but enough to get the job done. The world of Avatar, like airbending, Avatar, that one? Yes. Okay, it's there. I found one. Right. I don't know. I don't know how it was possible. Harry Potter. Of course it should have happened. Yes, there is a 5e conversion for Harry Potter. None of these things cost you any money because nobody can sell these things without creating wrath from the owners of that franchise. So you can get all this stuff for free. So I would really like to talk about these things. So Harry Potter. What else was there? Well, actually, there's a Star Wars 5e. A very good one, as it happens. And I would like to talk about that in the future as well, outside of Star Wars Saga. So Star Wars 5e actually exists. There are 4 books. And I would say most of them are pretty good. Most of them are pretty good. And it's also a website. We'll get back to that. That's 5. Now, I believe there was more. I think there was like 8 that I had found. Was another one that I sort of was percolating. Mass Effect. Did anybody play that video game Mass Effect? They have a Mass Effect 5e. Mass Effect. And there might be some more that has eluded my mind. I hate to say it, there is no Masters of the Universe 5e that I could find. Even though I've been teasing people for a little while about that sort of thing. There isn't. I couldn't find anything. Nothing made by fans. And I couldn't find anything for Indiana Jones. But I don't think you really need it. All you need to do is just get rid of death saving throws. and a lot of the magic. And make all of your classes martial classes rather than spellcasters, I would imagine. And then you've got Indiana Jones. Yeah. Okay. All right. So, Agile Monk. What do you got here, Monk? Let's have a look. Okay, Monk, what do you get? I think it would be nice to hear about Star Wars Saga. Well, that's why I want to talk about it in about 2 weeks. As I have often wondered how it plays. It plays like 3.5 and 4e. But I would say actually it plays more like... Yeah, it plays more like 3.5. I know that it has some mechanics from that were ported over to 4e, but it doesn't run like Powers. It runs very differently. There's feats in the game, but you also have what are called talent trees, and there's a lot of skills. So it does cover a lot. So yeah, you'll get to know about it because I will talk about it. Fantastic price. Yeah. Ming the Merciless in your Spelljammer campaign. Hell's yeah. Now that's that was an interesting sort of concept there. I was not expecting Flash Gordon, and Ming the Merciless, as you say, could be ported over to a Spelljammer campaign pretty easily. So that would be fun. Is it Squirms? Squarms. Star Wars D6 was our game back in the day. So look, I'm aware of the West End Star Wars game, the D6 one, and I do actually have some of the D20 books that Wizards of the Coast put out. Because they actually apparently made a game before they made Star Wars Saga that was... I've got like diagrams of the Death Star. Like, I didn't really expect that, but okay. That is something that I guess you just don't get nowadays. So, Agile Monk, I like the 3.5, so that's cool. Good. All right. I'm not a huge fan of it. Oh, Overboard DM. Overboard Joe, how's it going? There is a Star Wars 5e made by fans online. I know, it's free. I just mentioned it. It's awesome. Constantly making new content. Yes, they are. They've got 2 new books coming. I don't know when, but it's coming. Could you port D&D monsters into Star Wars? Yes, you could easily. And when I finally get the Dungeon Master preparation classes up and running, we are going to turn some of the monsters from various franchises into D&D 5e monsters. But make them cool rather than the pussies that the monster manual has. That's my intention. So yeah, you could absolutely do that. And many of the D&D monsters are already built. So there's a monster manual for Star Wars 5e. Like you don't have to make any of that stuff. It's already been done for you. There's a Rancor and there's a Dewback and stuff like that. So that stuff is there. So you don't have to really make it. Somebody's already made it for you. But I'll get back to that topic some other time. I'm not sure a Firelich would fit into that universe. No, probably not into Star Wars, but into Spelljammer. Yeah, because Spelljammer is crazy bats nuts and also scary weird stuff. Yep. Now, where can we find the Star Wars 5e? Well, I will tell you at some point. Or you could just type in Star Wars 5e and you'll probably find it. It'll probably be at the top of the Google search engine. Use Google. Don't use some other search engine. The Palladium Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I did not look up Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. There are some franchises that just didn't go for 5e or people didn't convert over to 5e. But you'd be surprised. There's so many have done that. Yep, so many have done that. No, that glass is empty. Let's try this again. Did I lose my train of thought? I don't know. So yes, when I finally get to a point where we can run those Dungeon Master preparation classes, we'll actually start making some monsters, some locations, and NPCs, and various other bits and pieces. For those of you who don't know, the notes for this live stream are on my Patreon, as are all of my notes for the Lost Mine of Phandelver, the DM tutorial stuff. And if it's not there, then you let me know and I will put it there. It's like $1 a month. I think that's the minimum you can pay. There's no tiers. I suppose I was supposed to actually say something about my Patreon. I suppose I should say all the YouTube things, but I'm just not going to. Most of you, like 90% of my subscribers come to my live streams anyway, and the other 10% is sort of like, what's this? So, Palladium Rifts, yes, absolutely. Look, I'm aware of it. I haven't played it. Okay, so Country 245. This is a delicate discussion for me, Country 245. So, you want me to talk about that book? I've talked about that book, and I got absolutely hosed by people. I got hosed by some of my peers as well. Like, it caused all sorts of problems. So, oh God. So what are your thoughts on the journey through the Radiant Citadel? Have you read the first chapter put out on D&D Beyond? No, I haven't. Do you know, here's my problem, Country 245, with discussing Beyond the Radiant Citadel, the new book. This is an anthology. I like the idea of anthologies. Let's get real. Every time a white person like myself, who's about 50 and who's a guy, who's apparently responsible for all of the horrible things that have happened in the world, which makes no sense because I grew up in the bloomin' ghetto. Every time we bring up this damn book, we get hosed. And Country 245, I feel like, and I don't want to give you a hard time about it because I'm not. But my problem is that every time this sodding book comes up, which I will buy, okay? I don't like the cover art, either the alternative or the new, but I will buy the book. And not just because I'm a YouTuber and I have to kind of talk about 5e stuff put out by Wizards of the Coast because that's what people want to know about. In this case, that's not actually the case. I will buy the book, even though I don't like the cover art. And it's because I want the book. Yep. Let's make that clear. But those people on both sides of the argument for and against this book, they are crazy fucking mother. They are so strange, man. They are out of their tree. Look, just give the book a chance. That's all I have to say. And yeah, I don't want to say anything more about that book, just because it caused so many problems before. And it's one of those times where I feel like I can't even speak my mind because I'm a white guy in his 50s. I was like, seriously? What do you do with that? So yeah, you don't have to be sorry, country. It's just this is where I'm at with this book. Unfortunately, I can't talk about it. Even if I buy the book, I can't even do a review about it because I just don't think. I think there would be too much of a backlash, either from crazy people on for it and crazy people against it. I don't want to deal with that. They're out of their tree. Anyway, moving on. Soul Train 42. I know why people are jacking with you. And that's kind of sucks. Yeah, well, I do get jerked around sometimes. It's just one of those things. But anyway, the adventures do sound really awesome. Yeah, I think that too. Soul Train 42. Welcome to America. This whole country is out of their tree, and this is one of my biggest problems. Is I hate to say it, in New Zealand we have our own problems, but God Almighty, I just don't want to be pulled into all of America's baggage as well, and I feel like that's where it was going. So, considering I'm a person, let's break it down so you kind of get an idea of me. I don't usually do this because this is silly stuff to be doing on social media or YouTube. Is like, let's hear about Fred's story, because you didn't show up for that. So I grew up very poor, like extremely poor. Okay? And we didn't have money for food. Like, that just didn't happen. Sometimes there just wasn't any money for food. All of the money went into getting the car back and forth from work and paying for the rental on a house. And we lived in the middle of nowhere in some bloody awful houses. And literally, I lived in the ghettos of Auckland, when Auckland had ghettos, and they did have ghettos. And trust me, if it wasn't for the Pacific Island women, I probably would have starved on many occasions, because there just wasn't anything to eat. So I have to thank the Tongans, the Samoans, Rarotongans, many of the islanders who wound up living in the ghettos, and I lived with them. So I lived around a lot of people with dark skin. And if it wasn't for them, yeah, me and my brother, we used to walk home from time to time, my father would say, with a bunch of bananas. Now, when I say a bunch of bananas, I don't mean like a little bunch of bananas. I mean the whole damn thing off the tree. Like, it's over a meter long. And my father would say all he would see is this bunch of bananas walking into the house, and there's 4 legs underneath it. And he figured it was his kids. Because, yes, we kind of did roam the street as well. So this is in Ponsonby and Grey Lynn and in Devonport, when it was literally like the pits. There was a whole month, I remember, we were living out in the Wairarapa. And my stepfather, I didn't live with my father. My father was extremely violent. He was not a nice guy to be around. My mum left him, fortunately. Otherwise, one of us was probably going to get hurt. Probably not me, but my younger brother. And there was probably 9 months where all we ate was pumpkin. Now, the reason all we ate was pumpkin is because we had a friend down the road who owned 2 Clydesdale horses, and there was this huge paddock that had gone to seed, and all that was growing in there was pumpkin. But the Clydesdales don't like eating pumpkin, okay? So they don't eat the pumpkin, so they would just grow there. They went to seed, and so my mum walked down to, what was his name? Was it Roy or Roger? I think it was Roger. And said, Roger, look, I've got nothing to feed the kids with. Can we eat the pumpkin in the field? And he said, sure, take as many as you like. So we ate pumpkin for 9 months. Okay? And that's how we survived for that period of time. There were other times where all there was porridge, and I refused to eat porridge. I will never eat porridge again. Mum tells me that I think my mum ate porridge during her pregnancy with me the entire time. That's all that was going into her system. That's how poor she was. All she could eat was porridge. There was nothing else. There were times where I had no shoes on my feet because there wasn't any money for it. And when we did have it, it was gumboots, because gumboots you could use them in the muddy environment. So even in summer, I had gumboots, or I just had bare feet. I think my first pair of shoes were barter bullets, and it was the most amazing thing to suddenly get shoes. And so I have had to fight all my life and my family to get where I am. So everything that I have, and you'd be surprised, people can be very prejudiced even when you have white skin if you're poor. And I can remember the shit that I had to deal with at school, from kids and even from adults, frankly, because I was poor and I didn't have anything. And I had holes in my clothes and I was wearing hand-me-downs. Like, seriously, hand-me-downs that you probably should have thrown away. Yeah, I don't want to ever go back to that life, okay? I don't think anybody should have to deal with that. But when somebody wants to go on about having to deal with crap, I can tell you, man, I've been there, I've done that, I know what it's like. I've been bullied at school. That's why I took up martial arts, is because they would just beat the hell out of me. So I learned to fight. And I did that for years. And then one day, when I didn't have to fight anymore, I was like, I don't want to do martial arts anymore. I'm sick of fighting. I don't have to fight anymore. But it's funny, even when as an adult, you don't necessarily have to fight with your fists. You have to fight with your words and your mouth, because there are still bullies out there, right? So that's me. So, yeah, I'm done with that. And anyway, Maria's. So now I'm sure I keep butchering your name, Maria's. Now, Maria's, you are a patron on my Patreon, I understand. I'm with you, Fred. I am brown and proud too. Yeah. My hope is that we can get past all of this skin bullshit and this, the difference between those who have lots of wealth and those who have very little. But, I don't know that, I don't know if that people can do that. Do you know what I mean? I think individually there are individuals who can get themselves past that. But as a species, I think there's some sort of inbuilt bloody thing wrong with us, frankly, sometimes. And yeah. So thank you. And I know you are a patron, because I noticed the name and I recognize it. And if I've mispronounced your name, I do apologize. It does take me a little while, and anyway, I'm going to lose my voice. Anyway, good news is I applied for some holiday leave. So at about the end of July, I will take some time off. I will hopefully finish all of the classes that I have been wanting to run on YouTube, which we were supposed to be in Lighthall, but I'll run them on YouTube. And that means the DM preparation, that means the basic core rules tutorials, that means the monster combat tactics for 5e, that means the basic character creation. That'll all come. Do you know what I mean? Hi Todd, thank you. And Country 245, thank you. Anyway, yeah, so that's what's coming. That's all. And I've penciled away that time to do that, but so that I don't lose my sanity, given that I work in a place where losing your sanity is very, very easy. Although I will be working on those classes while I'm on holiday, I want to paint some miniatures. So I will do about 2 weeks of just painting miniatures. And I was very tempted to run a Dungeon Master table or maybe two while I was on holiday and get Guy from How to Be a Great DM on board on one of these, because he's in South Africa. So trying to get him to marry up with everybody else, and he can't designate 2 or 3 hours. He might be able to handle an hour, but 2 or 3 hours is like ridiculous. He can't handle that. I was going to get him involved, but I'm going to take that time for me. So I'm going to paint some miniatures. I'm going to forget about the Dungeon Master Roundtable for 2 weeks over the first part of August, and I'm just going to paint miniatures and work on those classes. That's my plan. Yeah, which means I'll probably wind up in the Discord rather a lot, for those of you who don't know. And yes, I do have a Discord, and you can find that in the About section. I'm not hard to find. Okay, so, Monk, what do you got here? You are both loved and lovable, Fred. Well, I appreciate that, a real man. Well, Mike, DM prep classes, are you confused? Have I not mentioned this before? I thought I have mentioned this before. Because I keep getting told by people that I'm good, this channel's good if you're a new Dungeon Master, but if you're an experienced Dungeon Master, what have I got to offer? Well, so Mike, if you're confused as to what was supposed to happen with this, let me take this off because I can't read my handwriting with my glasses on, because apparently it's only at a certain distance. So this is what I've got. Basic adventure structure. So I will go over a basic adventure structure, and we will make an adventure during one of the lessons. So that's lesson 1, I believe. Lesson 2 is location. So that's doing maps. And there's some software you can use, or we might just use paper. I might not even bother using grid, frankly, because often I don't use a grid when I'm drawing maps. But creating locations, I tend to create locations based on real locations, like real stuff, like not fantasy. Let's use a maze, which is fine. You can use a maze, but I like other stuff. Building monsters from scratch. And since it's not going to take the entire 2 hours, we can probably modify some of those 5e monsters that don't really work the way they need to, or the way I don't like them. I'm looking at you, Rust Monster, and I'm looking at you at a few other creatures that need to have a bit of some spicing up because they're boring. Creating non-player characters, something I do reasonably well, I think, and so we'll cover that, and we'll actually make some NPCs, we'll make some monsters. That's what that is intended to be. We'll create some magic items, and I don't mean weapons and armor, because that's easy. I mean the hard stuff, like the stuff that is common, that we can port over from other stuff, and that you can put into your game without having to worry about it breaking your game. Like, how do you make magic items and include them in your game without them just taking over? So that's what that's all about. We'll actually make some stuff. I will explain how to do it, and we'll make some stuff. And I'll probably at some point we'll put together a table or chart as part of this class on different aspects you can add to armor and weapons. Because I think right now, if the only thing you can ever do is just do more damage or change the damage type, it's kind of dull. Anyway, but my focus is more on common magic items, because you can include more of them. And then learning to improvise. So I've got some techniques that we can sort of practice and I can show you. So I'll do that and demonstrate it. And then hopefully when we can get people included into this, then you guys can practice with me. Skill challenges. I keep going on about skill challenges, but I can explain to you how to make a skill challenge for 5e and how I would go about making it, which is not the 4e one. It's not the same. Okay? My approach is very different. And actually, I think that was really the intent behind the designers, that it'd be less structured, a skill challenge, but we can use that for an action scene. We can use that for a traps. Or make really good skill challenges, and we'll actually make some skill challenges so that you can use them. That's the intention. And some world building. Oh yeah, we'll build some worlds. Like it takes 30 seconds to draw up a map for your world, and then all the rest is like filling in the gaps. So we can deal with that. We can do that in one session. Build an entire world. Trust me, it can be done. We've done it before. So that is the Dungeon Master preparation stuff. I think that covers pretty much most of the stuff that you guys would be dealing with. So that is coming. And hopefully, when I take my time off work, I'll get a chance to finish those classes so that I can run them. So that's what's coming. I think we covered that. Anyway, let's have a look at this poll before I have to go. And I'll put my eyes back on. So Mike, do you like the sound of that? Hopefully that appeals to a few people. So, do you want to use the Firelich in Dungeons & Dragons in a Dungeons & Dragons game? Well, it's changed now. We've got 35% have said yes, still 10% have said no, undecided is 55%. Fair enough. We will talk about another monster some other time, but we're probably, I don't know when that'll be. We're going to talk about Star Wars in about 2 weeks, so I better get busy sorting that out. In any case, thank you to my patrons. Thank you to everybody who's been supportive and watching my live streams. Thank you to the people who super chatted or super stickered me today, which is Country245 and Agile Monk. And both, I'm pretty sure, and Agile Monk is a patron. I'm absolutely sure of that. And is it Country245? I can't remember I think you are. Didn't you sign up as a patron as well? So you could get all my documentation? I think you did. Right. Okay. Anyway, thank you to everybody. Thank you to patrons. Thank you for watching my stuff. Thank you for supporting me on the live streams. This is my preferred method. Better for me to be doing this than to spend 4 or 5, 6, 10, 8 hours editing and that's it. That's like, I feel like it's wasted time. Anyway, so wherever you are in the world, whether it be the morning, the afternoon, or the night, please, or the wee early morning, please look after yourself, your family, and your friends. Be nice to your neighbours. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s. Country, it feels like you're a patron even if you aren't a patron, considering the amount of super chats you've been throwing my way. Right.